Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl with me, AJ. Today, I'm here in the beautiful mountains of Italy, a couple hours north of Milan, and I'm here to test the new VW Caddy TGI. What is the TGI? No, it's not the restaurant. This is the new CNG-powered Caddy. So join us today as we test this car on road to see if CNG really is an alternative fuel. Come on, let's go. Here at the front, the VW Caddy doesn't look too different than the previous version because of course this is just a upgrade and mostly mechanical in the engine. You see the regular Caddy headlights with normal halogen lights, a very wide bumper with one strip of chrome. Because this new version gets the adaptive cruise control, there is the radar sensor behind the logo and hence it's just a two-dimensional logo, and you see the Blue Motion badging. As we go further down, you see the park assist sensors and no fog lamps. So tell us what you think about this design. Put your comments in the section below. The Caddy is about 2 meters wide. That's about 6 foot 6 inches, and it's about 4.5 meters long. That's about 14 feet 9 inches. As standard, you get 16-inch rims like the ones we have here, but you have the option of upgrading them to 17 inches. As we continue down the side, it's instantly recognizable as a Caddy. Has a very boxy shape with a large sliding door, which aids in loading things if you want to load things through the middle. And I'll show you how the door opens a little bit later on. And towards the back, a very steep angle. Again, very boxy. Form follows function for the Caddy. Here at the back, the bumper is really low and the hatch is really wide. So it gives you a very big opening to load things inside. On the bottom, you have the sensors for the parking assist, as well as a parking camera over here. On the right hand side, you have the TGI Blue Motion badging and the Caddy badging on the left. So here we have the key. So it doesn't have keyless entry. The door opens really wide, again because of the tall body shape. There's a very large opening and the door sill is also really quite low, so very easy to enter. But the door panel itself is quite barren. It's very bland. I think there is some interesting material and texture here, but everything is really hard. Even this is pretty hard. The only saving grace is that the armrest on the side is a little bit padded. Now let's look into the cabin. These seats are nice. These are fabric, which is what we always prefer here in Autogefühl. It has some nice interesting detail for the stitching along the seams, and it can be adjusted for height, reclining, and lumbar support. And overall, when you look into the cabin, it doesn't look too different than the rest of the VW, but of course it looks a lot more functional, a lot more utilitarian. A very rectangular theme with just one trim to accentuate the width and to kind of break the monotony of the overall black scheme. So now let's take a look at the dashboard. It's a very familiar layout, very Volkswagen-like, but hard plastics all around, which I guess is expected in a Caddy, I guess. But if you go for the higher trim levels, you get a little bit better plastics. But apart from that, the steering wheel is pretty nice. It has a good grip, has a flat bottom, a lot of functions to control the adaptive cruise control on the left and to navigate through the menus on the right. There is a analog tachometer on the left with the CNG fuel level indicator, a screen in the middle, which I'll show you later on, and the speedometer on the right with the fuel level indicator for the petrol tank. So you have two fuel tank indicators, which is pretty interesting. The air vents are also positioned pretty well. They circulate the air well without inside the cabin and doesn't just blow air right into your hands, which would be really pointless. The steering wheel can be adjusted for height as well as reach. Then towards the center, we have your climate control, dual zone with seat heaters. Again, this is the option. And down here is the infotainment system. This is the trendline infotainment system with a CD player and a couple SD slots. Again, nothing too special. You have hotkey functions for radio, media, phone, voice activation, navigation, and you have all those same functions over here. You have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as well. So this stuff is pretty standard. So I guess you guys can, I don't need to repeat all these things again. And maybe I'll just tell you that the navigation works pretty well. You get commands on your dashboard screen as well. And I always like it when there is an extra knob just for the zoom function, because it's so much easier to operate while on the move. Down here, you will see the button for the parking sensors and the auto shut off button. And down here, you see there's a cubby hole to put your phone, a USB port, an auxiliary port, a 12-volt power socket. And this is the 6-speed manual. There's the optional 6-speed DSG as well. Your handbrake lever, a couple beverage holders with felt lining in the bottom, and an armrest which can be adjusted for height as well as length. Let's give it a shake test. Yeah, pretty solid. Pretty narrow rectangular cubby hole. No felt lining in this case, just hard plastic. But you also have a USB port. There's several other places to keep storage items, to store items in this car. For example, there's a shelf up here, thanks to the really high roof line. So you can probably keep sunglasses or, I don't know, some secret things up here if you wish. And of course, a pretty decent sized lockable glove box. So when there is no navigation route programmed, it just shows a compass. Then you can connect your phone. Then there's several driver assistance functions which are new to this updated version of the VW Caddy TGI. You have driver alert and you have front assist. This is because the same hardware which is used for the adaptive cruise control can also be used to, for this program for the front assist, because it's anyway measuring the distance with the car in the front. So as a useful feature. So again, front assist, ACC, you have some settings where you can alter how responsive it is and things like that. I've tried it out while driving and it's, nothing to write home about. It works fine, nothing really different or special. But again, it's always a useful feature to have when you're doing long distances. So you have Park Pilot, like I mentioned, with the sensors, as well as a reversing camera. And yeah, a bunch of other settings. Then it gives you your average speed, oil temperature, and you get the consumption of your CNG in terms of live consumption in terms of kilograms per hour, or an average consumption in terms of kilograms per 100 kilometers. We'll take a look at this when we're driving later on. And this will give you the range that you have left in terms of the CNG. So right now we have 370 kilometers left with the gas and 90 kilometers left with the petrol, and a CNG quality indicator. And we're back to the same. Adaptive cruise control. Now you can see that the graphics in the screen is very, it's just black and white. It's not really fancy. I guess they could have made it a little bit better, because at 27, 28, or even 30,000 euros, I would expect this screen to be a little bit better. Anyway, then you have your audio controls, and we're back to the navigation. Now let's take a look in the back seat. So we have a sliding door on both sides. Slides really wide to give a very wide opening. Again, fairly low door sill. And before we get inside, let's just take a look at how the seats tumble. So there's a tab over here which will tumble the seat back. Then there's a lever which you pull, and then you can flip the seat up. And there's some nice handles here which you can pull it up with. And actually with this way you can load your items without having to go to the back if you'd want to have a quick access. Anyway, let's put the seat back. Up and hop inside. Getting in is fairly easy thanks to the low lip. The seat itself is fairly supportive, fairly soft, fairly comfortable. The bench is also quite wide, so three adults in fact, could sit here if they wanted to. There is a little bit of a transmission tunnel, but it's fairly low, so it shouldn't really be a problem. Apart from that, you have air conditioning vents, a 12-volt power socket, and a very interesting cup holder. Finally, there are two ISOFIX points on the outside seats. To open the rear window, there's a little switch that you pinch, and then half of it can slide open. Very large hatch with a very large rectangular opening. There is a flexible parcel shelf which retracts out of the way. You can remove it altogether if you want, like so. Even this divider between the front and the rear section of the car can also be removed. It's a bit of a handful, so I don't want to undo all of that right now. But apart from that, as you can see, there's so much of loading space here. And because this has the CNG gas tanks below this, there is no need for a false floor. So this is just as you get it. There's no way to raise or lower this floor. But because it's so low and it's so flush with the rest of the bumper and the things like that, it's very easy to load heavy items. There are some cup holders, interestingly, at the back here. I don't know who would need cup holders all the way back here. Some other small storage bins, as well as a 12-volt power socket. The VW Caddy TGI starts at around 27,000 euros and can go up to 32,000 euros, which is roughly the same amount for the TDI or the diesel variants of the VW Caddy. Now let's take a look under the hood. So there is a gas charged strut and the hood stays open by itself. Some insulation at the top as well. So this is the 1.4 engine. It's an inline 4-cylinder turbo engine which runs on both petrol and CNG. It makes 110 horsepower and 200 newton meters of torque. It comes mated to a 6-speed manual as standard, but you can also take the optional 6-speed DSG, and it goes to front-wheel drive. Now the petrol tank is really small. It's only about 13 liters, which is probably good for a range of about 100 kilometers. And there are 4 cylindrical CNG tanks at the back of the car under the chassis, which together hold about 25 kilograms of CNG. But this is the Caddy, the regular wheelbase version. If you take the Caddy Maxi, which has a longer wheelbase, then there is a 5th extra cylindrical tank of CNG, and it holds around 32 kilograms of gas. A CNG engine, by definition of being a CNG engine, is a little bit quieter than a petrol or diesel engine of the same size. So I'm standing about 1 meter away from the engine, and this is how loud it sounds. Here we are driving the new VW Caddy. We're driving out of Milan and up into the mountains. And how fitting, because Italy is actually the largest market for CNG vehicles in all of Europe. Now, CNG vehicles is not a new concept. In fact, CNG has been used quite widely in commercial vehicles all around the world for quite a long time. In fact, since the year 2000, there's been a significant increase in the number of CNG vehicles around the world. But it still somehow hasn't found widespread acceptance in the consumer market. But as we'll see today, CNG has quite a lot of benefits. So what is CNG? Well, CNG essentially is compressed natural gas. It is primarily methane compressed to about 200 bar. And LPG is liquid petroleum gas, which is primarily butane and propane in a liquid state, but at a much less pressure. The benefits of CNG is that it's cheaper, it burns much cleaner, and it produces less suspended particulate matter, as well as it's much more quieter in the engine. It runs a lot more smoother and quieter. And finally, it has a higher octane, which means it produces more power simply because it's almost 95% pure methane as compared to other fuels like petrol, which is has other hydrocarbons included as well. And well, yeah, so the Caddy gets 2 tanks essentially. It has the 13-liter petrol tank, and it also has a larger CNG tank, like I was talking about earlier. With the CNG only, you can get about 500 kilometers of range, and the 13 liters of petrol can take you about 100 kilometers. So overall, you're getting about 600 kilometers out of this car. The Maxi, which is the longer wheelbase version of the Caddy, has a larger tank because it obviously has more space to fit another cylinder in the bottom, and that gives a combined range of about 760 kilometers. But the thing is, it really depends on how you drive it. You know, just like petrol or electric powered cars, these figures are in the optimum conditions. So it's probably not gonna, be that much in the real world. But what you can expect is roughly for 600 kilometers, you should be able to expect spending only about 28 to 30 euros, which is a really good deal if you ask me. Another issue with CNG is that it's really difficult to refuel it because, for example, in Germany, even though there's about 100,000 CNG vehicles, which in fact is really low, there's only about 900 fueling stations which offer CNG as an option. So, you have to really be careful. That's why I think it has found more acceptance in the commercial vehicle market because, there's a lot more planning involved in a commercial vehicle, for delivery and to do work. So you always know where you're going, and generally it's within one area. So if you know that there is a place where you can refuel yourself with CNG, then it's much more easier. Because of course you can't run this car on the 13 liters of petrol. No way you can do that. But anyway, let's take a look at what the mileage we're getting now. It says we've just been driving very recently. We just started off. So, let's see. Average, it says 7.6 kilograms for 100 kilometers, which again is too early to say. We'll check back in later on when I've driven a little bit further. But apart from that, it's a really comfortable car. Even though this is a light commercial vehicle, since we're in the more consumer version with back seats and windows and everything, it's quite comfortable inside. It's very quiet. This new Caddy has much better sound insulation than the previous version. And again, this engine has been improved. It's a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine now, and therefore it's a lot more smoother. But another thing I notice is that there's a little bit of turbo lag. I don't know if it's just because of the engine or if it's because that the engine is running on CNG. Maybe somebody out there, one of you guys know if there's a difference in the way a turbocharger behaves with CNG versus petrol. Do let me know. I'd be interested to find out. But I do feel quite a bit of turbo lag. When I put my foot down, it's a very noticeable change in the surge of power that is delivered. But again, this is a Caddy. It's not really, you shouldn't be buying this if you want to be, driving enthusiastically. So for what it's supposed to do, I guess, having a little bit of turbo lag is not really such a big deal. Apart from that, thanks to the really tall body, the windows are really large, the windscreen is also really big, so you have a lot of visibility. The seating position is also adjustable. You can increase the height. The seat itself is very comfortable, and you can set the lumbar supports, and there's armrests on either side, so you can find a really good seating position. Of course, the steering wheel column also can be adjusted, so it's quite comfortable and relaxing. So an update on the fuel economy, because the first time I checked it, I had just started off, so it was quite high. Let me get around this bicyclist real quick. There we go. So now it says we're doing about 5.3 kg per 100 kilometers, which is significantly better and overall is a pretty good number for a 110 horsepower engine. Thanks to this being a CNG, we can expect even lower numbers. VW claims that the Caddy can do about 4.1 kilograms for 100 kilometers. And again, I think that's just when you're, running it in optimal conditions. But even if it's about 4.5 or 5, I think that's a very respectable number, especially for companies who use this as a commercial vehicle. That makes such a huge difference overall in the long run, because these commercial vehicles are run almost on a daily basis and for really long distances. So in a year, that little bit of extra saving that you get from a CNG will add up and result in a higher cost saving. The new VW Caddy, the TGI, is also now available with a 6-speed DSG. Fortunately here I just have the 6-speed manual, but if you want the best efficiency and of course more comfort, then the 6-speed DSG is much better. Speaking of comfort, the new VW Caddy also gets the adaptive cruise control. This is operated with the steering wheel buttons. There is no separate stalk, and this adaptive cruise control works for speeds up to 160 kilometers per hour. Apart from that, because this is the trend line, we also have a touchscreen infotainment system with navigation. It's a fairly smaller screen, and it's all right though. You can read it pretty easily. The colors are pretty smooth. Colors are pretty bright, and it refreshes pretty smoothly. And you have a knob on the right side to zoom in and out, so it's very easy to use while you're driving. It's not distracting. Now we're here in the mountains, very beautiful landscape, and now I'm starting to feel a little bit more of the drawbacks with the Caddy's taller body. Though the steering wheel is actually pretty nice, it gives plenty of feedback, it has decent amount of weight, but it's also very responsive and light when you're at low speed, so it's easy to make tight turns in city and narrow areas. But the body, because I think it's a little bit taller, and this is again sprung a little bit more softer, it kind of rolls around corners. And I also noticed that at highway speeds, strong crosswind can kind of upset the car, again because of the softer suspension and the tall body. It kind of gets pushed a little bit. Of course, if you have more weight in the Caddy in the back, if you've loaded up with equipment or with people or whatever, then it's going to be a lot more planted. But because now it's just me and Jonas inside, it is a little bit light, and you can feel that in the body control around corners. Apart from that, the engine, while it's really smooth, and of course the CNG makes it a lot more cleaner and efficient, and it's very suitable to use on the highway, when you want to drive a little bit more enthusiastically, construction work, red light. When you want to drive a little bit more enthusiastically, that turbo lag that I was talking about earlier kind of plays a little bit of a spoil sport. But overall, I think it's a good engine, and I think it's a great solution and a great alternative to diesel. Let's summarize today's drive of the VW Caddy TGI, especially in terms of the CNG drivetrain. Well, first of all, I think CNG is a great source as an alternative fuel instead of petrol or diesel. It's a lot more cheaper to buy, it's cleaner, it has a lot less noise pollution, a lot less suspended particulate pollution, and it has a higher octane value. Now the Caddy as well is a great versatile commercial vehicle with its relatively compact dimensions as compared to, say, the T6 or larger other commercial vehicles. It's a lot more maneuverable in tighter city spaces, but at the same time, thanks to its boxy design, there's a lot of volume and a lot of space on the interior. Now the Caddy, this new update, also has the option of a 6-speed DSG automatic for those who want a more convenient option, as well as adaptive cruise control and front assist. So overall, the new Caddy TGI with its upgraded safety and features, as well as the CNG powertrain, I think is a really good option for anybody who's in the market for a sustainable commercial vehicle. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, We always take pictures and videos as well as live streams as and when we're filming our projects, so you always get a sneak peek at what's coming next. I'll see you guys soon.